Welcome to another video from the Fisherman's Net and Saints Peter and Paul in Naperville, Illinois. In these videos, we're looking at Christ's question to his apostles, "Who do you say that I am?" We're looking at Christ as fully God and fully man. In our last video, we saw that in the early church, one of the questions was, how do we put these two together, fully God and fully man? And that the Nestorians couldn't seem to put the two together. They couldn't reconcile the unity of Christ. And so Nestorianism kind of left Christ as two persons, a divine and a human person. But that the Council of Ephesus said, no, in Christ there's one divine person with a fully human nature and a fully divine nature. Well, that wasn't the end of the controversies. In fact, shortly after, another controversy arose that seemingly couldn't put together the full humanity and the full divinity of Christ. And this is what's known as Monophysitism, or the Monophysites. Now that comes from a Greek word that means one nature. The Monophysites believed that Christ, after the incarnation, only had one nature. And the idea is kind of like this. Imagine that the divinity of Christ is like an ocean. And in comparison to the ocean, his humanity is only, say, a drop of food coloring. And what happens to a drop of food coloring if you drop it in the ocean? Well, it completely dissipates. It's absorbed. It's gone. So this was the idea of the Monophysites, that in the coming together of the divine and the human, the human simply dropped out. The divine overpowered or assumed into itself the human, just like a drop of food coloring in the ocean. So the Monophysites, even though they'd say that Christ is the coming together of the divine and the human, would say that after the incarnation, all we really have left is the divine. This, of course, puts our salvation in peril. Because for our salvation, we need someone who is truly God, because only God can save us, and truly man, because it's man's sin that we're to be saved from. And so the church again calls a council, this time in 451 in Chalcedon. And the Council of Chalcedon says that, yes, in this one person of Christ comes together a fully divine nature and a fully human nature, and that those two natures aren't confused, they're not commingled in some confused way, but neither are they separated or divided. That each of those two natures, being fully God and being fully man, retain their full characteristics. So we have, this is, with the Council of Chalcedon in 451, we really have kind of the classic statement from the early church that Christ is one divine person with a fully divine nature and a fully human nature, true God and true man. The debate didn't end there, the controversies didn't end there. In order to somewhat appease the remaining Monophysites, some suggested that, well, there may be in Christ the full human nature, the full divine nature, but maybe in him there's only one power or one will. And this was another controversy. Does Jesus have a truly human will? Does he choose, as we do, with a full human act of the will? Or is his human will completely done away with by the divine will? And again, this was a little bit later, but in the early church, again, a council was called, and the matter was defined that, yes, not only is Christ fully God and fully man, not only does he have a true human body, a human soul, human intellect, but yes, he has a true will. One of the mottos of some of the early church fathers when it came to Christ was that what was not assumed was not saved, or what was not taken on by Christ was not healed. So did Christ have a true human body? He must have, or our human bodies are not saved and healed. Did he have a true human soul? He must have, or our human souls wouldn't be saved and redeemed. Did he have a true human intellect, a true human will? He must have, because what was not assumed was not redeemed. If he didn't have a true human will, a true human intellect, then our will and intellect is left in the deep mire of sin and death. So the early church has again this pattern, as things are challenged, of calling these councils of bishops, where matters that were already revealed were settled, where that question that Christ asked his apostles so far back, who do you say that I am? The church over these about 400 to 500 years finally developed a vocabulary to articulate in the clearest way it could the answer to that question, that Jesus Christ is one divine person, the second person of the Trinity, but that he is fully God and fully man.